Greetings, this is Obi-Wan Kenobi, and I have drifted into the underworld. The Star Wars underworld. I have a bad feeling about this.
Here we go. We must go to the lower levels. The underworld.
You've taken your first step into a larger world.
You're after something.
Ben.
Since I've started the underworld, I've met so many great friends.
Chris.
I grew up in the 1990s, and mall packaging is nostalgic for me.
Dominic.
What I love most about Star Wars is that it's fun and it's all-around good times.
So, this is where the fun begins.
May the Force be with us.
This thing really moves!
Woo! I like this!
I can't believe you came all this way to see me.
Why am I not in the intro? I gotta come up with a snappy line.
Every single time, I think that's ad-libbed. Every single time. But it's not. What's up, Star Wars fans? Welcome to another episode of the Star Wars Underworld podcast. We are your source for the latest breaking Star Wars news, reviews, and discussion each and every week. And this week on the show, we're going to be diving into the latest MandoVerse news, including a rumored title reveal for Dave Filoni's upcoming movie. And let me tell you guys, it is the most original, inventive title for a new Star Wars project in the history of title rumors. You won't believe the lengths they went to make this creative, original title. We're also going to be breaking down and discussing news related to the extremely unfortunate closing of Disney's Galactic Starcruiser Hotel. Plus, stick around for later in the show. We are opening it up to questions from the chat and questions from our Discord server, which we're very excited to be chatting with you guys and talking Star Wars with you guys. If you have any super chats, we'll get to those then, but feel free to leave them in the time being. All that and much more on this episode of the Star Wars Underworld podcast. My name is Chris, and joining me, it is the founder of the Star Wars Underworld, Ben Hart, the Star Wars guy.
Hello, Chris. Hello, Hannah. That is not my line. I'm sorry.
Of course.
This is weird.
Have you been to Canada recently?
I really shouldn't do that. Apologies for that. Yeah, it's been a while. It's been a wild day, I will say, in Star Wars news. Got some pretty unexpected and pretty sad news, in my opinion, in regards to Starcruiser, and some other stuff happening. And yeah, as you said, we're working on some great listener feedback later in the show, getting your questions and hopefully answering as many as we can. Obviously, send your super chats down below, and we'll get to them towards the end of the program.
Heck yeah, super stoked.
Ooh,
Super stoked. Super stoked,
bro.
Oh my gosh, that other voice.
Super stoked like Dooku.
You see, from the Raeside, it is Hannah.
G'day there. Great to be back for another show. One of my favorite fun facts, I think maybe the episode of Star Wars Underworld where we discussed the Starcruiser arrival announcement. It's coming. Here it is. That might have been the first show. It might have been the second show I was ever guesting on this show about. And we talked about it and we broke it all down. So it's really funny that kind of in my short lifetime here at the Underworld, it's risen and it's now decayed. But I'm sure we'll get into the goss of it. Can't wait. Great to be here.
I see you say that, and my brain immediately goes back to, okay, we need to go back and we need to watch that episode and see what else we talked about so we know what's about to get canceled.
Yes.
Was it prophetic? Oh my God.
Yeah.
Prophecy.
Oh my goodness. So yeah, we'll get to that very, very shortly. In the meantime, we want to remind everybody to punch that subscribe button to it on YouTube. Like we said, any super chats we'll be getting to later in the show and interact with you guys in the chat. You can also become a channel member. And if you are listening on a podcast app, please review and subscribe over there. And how you can be involved in the show if you watch it later or listen to it later is by joining the SWU Network Discord, and you can find the link to that and all of the podcast descriptions and notes across all the platforms, and that's where we have the questions section. What specifically is the section called, Ben, in the Discord?
So what you will do when you go to the Star Wars Underworld Network Discord, you will scroll down, not all the way down, but close to the bottom, past the main section and past the Anything Goes section. Right below that, you will see a section for the Star Wars Underworld podcast, and the thread is called Ask SWU. Yes, speaking of original titles, and that's where you can throw your questions in there, and it's just a great place for you guys. You know, a lot of you probably can't be here for the live show, whether you're listening or whatever else in the future. So it's a great place for you guys in between shows. If you have a question or something, you can just drop it in there, and we'll throw it in the show notes, and we'll answer it on our next episode.
Aha, there's the section right there. Ask
Beautiful.
SWU.
It exists. It's real.
Real.
Yes.
We're not lying.
Yes. So definitely check that out. And of course, our Discord has a lot of other great things going on, like movie nights and game nights and discussion threads for everything you can possibly imagine. It's definitely the number one place to interact with us and the rest of the Star Wars Underworld community, and the community for all the podcasts on the network throughout the week when we are not live. So check that out. Link is in all of the descriptions and notes everywhere. At the SWU, of course, is where you can follow us for updates on social media. And speaking of those other shows on the Star Wars Underworld Network, make sure you check out those as well. The Raeside, RAE side, is where you can find Hannah's stuff on YouTube. We got Tales from Beyond the Galaxy over on Twitch, and on this very channel on YouTube is the Ion Cannon Show, which is, you can find Matthew and Joel over there every Monday talking about the latest canon news and a lot of awesome publishing talk and beyond over there. So make sure you check that out. All right, let's get to our first news story, which is Star Wars Galactic Starcruiser closing. That's what we're doing first.
I think so.
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, it's the biggest and it's the latest thing to happen.
Yeah.
So for those who don't know, if you are under a rock, because you're probably listening to this in the future, possibly, and you've already heard about this already, but as of today, it was announced that and at first I thought this was a joke. Genuinely, I thought, oh, someone's reporting this. Might happen. It's a rumor. No, this was a statement from Disney. As of September 28th, that will be the quote final voyage of the Galactic Starcruiser. And they put out a statement thanking all the cast members and all that stuff. And Disney was very explicit in saying it's done. It's done. So I don't know. There's a lot of mixed opinions about this. A lot of people. I've been reading your comments all night, and you'll be like, some people were like, "Good, it was too expensive," or like, "Yeah, this is a real big surprise." But ultimately, it kind of sucks because, for one, I didn't get to go. That really sucks. And number two, as Hannah said, like, it's not been very long that the thing has existed, and now it's done. So I don't know. How do we feel about this?
Wow. So I've always had a kind of mixed feelings about the Galactic Starcruiser. Obviously, like, the concept is cool. Like, I'm so glad that they attempted to do this. Honestly, the thing that I think maybe did it in is I think they went a little bit too overboard. I think they made an experience that honestly was so good that it became inaccessible to most people. And that has to do with, how difficult it was to get tickets initially. And then after the fact, it wasn't hard to get tickets, but they were so darn expensive. That was the problem. And I think for an experience where you're going inside a resort and you are inside the whole time, except for a brief moment where you do a little excursion to Galaxy's Edge, which you can go to for, you know, a few $100 or even cheaper if you have discounts and passes. To have an experience inside like that for a few days, to pay the amount that it costs and have it be as expensive as getting on a cruise and going around like tropical islands for the same amount or longer amount of time, when you have an entire cruise of food and entertainment and shows and things for the whole family to do. Like, they charge that much for being inside a kind of relatively small building where, you know, it's really cool. You feel immersed. You're in Star Wars. You can be a part of the story. But I just feel like it just doesn't, the price never matched what the experience was. I felt like the experience just did not match. It did not warrant the price. And I think that was a problem for everybody, which is why so few people I know have been able to do it. I can like count on one hand how many people I know have been to the Galactic Starcruiser. And it was something, you know, that, you know, would take many, many years of planning and saving for most of us to go to. And that's even if it's a priority. So I think that was kind of one of the main issues. I think if they had figured out a way to make it more of an economy thing, a little bit closer to at least the price of maybe the most expensive resort before at Disneyland, like the Floridian or the Californian or things like that. I think maybe they could have kept enough people coming in to keep it going if it just was, they dialed it back a little bit. So again, I'm glad that the people that were able to pay or were able to get in through other means, whatever, were able to have that experience. I'm sure it was absolutely incredible because they didn't pull out any stops. And I'm glad that people will have that in their memories and, you know, their photo reels and videos and such. But it's unfortunate that the rest of us didn't get to experience it. And it's unfortunate that they made the thing that was so unrealistic for the average person to do. So very mixed feelings on it.
Yeah, I echo a lot of what you just said there. And, you know, it kind of feels too logical to say, oh, let's find the middle ground here. Like, I like what you're saying there, Chris, is like dial it back. Like, I think the fact that it was just this like full-time, what was it? Was it 3 days or 2 days?
It was
2 days?
I think 2 days, 2 nights, I think.
Yeah, like and it was like fully committed. You're like, it's like you were in the bit the whole time. Like, it was so committed. Where in my opinion, I think, and what we're all saying here, like something that would be so much more accessible and interesting to people is literally just, you know, a resort, a hotel, a complex that's themed all those things. Like, let's have, you know, cockpits and escape pods and things you can go in and touch buttons. You can kind of really live aesthetically in that world. But I think the commitment to it being this, we're on a mission for 2 days, 2 nights. We're committed. Like, you got to be in this realm. It was just such a big commitment. And that's, you know, probably why it did have such a price tag, because it had so many people behind the scenes having to run this at such a high quality and high intensity. Where, yeah, in my opinion, I really think just a aesthetically themed resort, you could still charge hundreds of dollars, and I think people would definitely pay that. If like, hey, yeah, I get to live in, you know, I get to live in the Tainted 4 for 2 days for like $500 a night. Like, I'd probably save up and go, yeah, I'm going to commit to that. That's cool. I'm going to go do that. Where this was just such a 1%, top 1% of people could genuinely go, yeah, I'm going to go do this, because it was just like what we're saying, like the expense of it is just so narrowing for its audience. And yeah, I'm not surprised it's come to this point so quickly. They're like, oh, we're not making too much money on this.
And again, you know, just to reiterate, like, there are certain things that people will pay that price for, like a whole vacation. Maybe you can budget that for like a whole vacation. Like, if you're going to be gone for like a week and you're traveling and you got all your food and experiences all baked into that, then maybe that can be your thing you do every few years or whatever you save up for it. But this was only a few days. It was not an entire vacation. So to have all that money just go into just a few days, like I think they kind of thought that, well, if people are going to pay that much for a cruise, they'll pay that much for Star Wars. But again, it's like a cruise has something for everybody, like a Disney resort I think they call it Disney like destinations or something like that, where you can go to like Hawaii and places like that. Like, you know, those like, you know, they're kind of, they're more inclusive for everybody. And, you know, it's not just for someone who like is like a huge Star Wars fan, like you have something to do, and it's more general. And so I think that works for that. But for this to be, like you said, such an intensive experience where it's like you're all committed to it, and it kind of almost feels like you're like wasting money if you step away from it from a bit. Like
you gotta commit.
Like if you're in a cruise, you can kind of like lay by the pool and for like 5 hours, and you don't feel like you're missing anything. You're like, well, I'm paying to be on vacation. I'm paying to be like, you know, on the deck of this cruise or whatever, at the beach at one of the islands it goes to. Like, that's cool. But like Starcruiser, you can't just lay in bed. Like if you're there for 48 hours, if you're on a Star Wars ship for 48 hours and you're paying thousands of dollars to do that, how do you even justify doing anything but that during that time? It doesn't sound like a relaxing time. It sounds like, let's just go and do as much as we can with the time.
It's like you pay to work. It's like I gotta go to work now. I gotta go work on this Star Wars ship now.
Exactly. So that I think they missed that part where it's not a vacation, it's an experience. And as an experience, it's not priced like an experience. It's priced like a vacation. And it's not.
I have a counter idea that I want your guys' opinion on, because I have an idea here of if we were to pitch a Star Wars themed holiday package similar to what this is, experience, what would it be and what would it be themed at? I'll give you a second to think, and I'll pitch you my idea. Is, you know, Disney does do the cruises, the Disney cruise, I don't know what it's called, its official name, but they should do a cruise, you know, aesthetically themed the ship to be a little like fairly Star Warsy, and it goes through some island, maybe the Caribbean or somewhere, and you're on Scarif, and they kind of pitch it like the Rogue One, you're going to Scarif, and they maybe even have a destination on one of the islands where it's kind of set up like the base on Scarif and things like that. And it's like this Rogue One Star Wars experience. And then, you know, if that's, you know, 5,000 for, you know, a 3-night cruise, you know, that's where I think what you're saying there, Chris, is like, it needs to be a vacation. It has to be this all out thing. It's like that's what I would pitch. A Scarif themed cruise in the Caribbean.
It's the Screws. That's the name for it. Welcome to the Screws.
The Scarif cruise. Oh my god!
You just,
Oh,
there you go.
But anyway, what would you theme a hotel and experience a Star Wars thing on? Like, if we were to make a new one, what would you guys like do?
Yeah, I mean, okay. So I think one thing that they might end up doing, and I wouldn't be surprised if they do this, is they might roll back the timeline of the Disney stuff to the MandoVerse era. They might, because you're comparing, the only thing that we really know that's coming out from the sequels is this Rey film. And the Rey film is like 10, 15 years right after the sequels. Right. So it's not even the same sequel universe. So there's not a lot of new content coming out at the time that Black Spire Outpost and Batu are themed in. And the parks themselves, they've added things recently like Grogu and the Mandalorian as characters in the park. So they've pretty much given up on the idea of having immersion of a specific timeline. And so unless it diverges where, like, you know, it goes across all times, I think they're probably going to roll back to the Mando. So my guess would be if they're going to make another resort or hotel or cruiser experience, it's going to be based on the MandoVerse completely. It's going to be based on Book of Boba Fett and the Ahsoka show and the Mandalorian, and everything's going to kind of go off of that stuff. That's what I would guess.
I see, and see, I took this news as I don't really believe that they're closing this. I think the closing is like, okay, the general story and concept of you get on a starship and you fly across the galaxy and you're in this like essentially a space cruise ship. That idea is closing, but they still have that giant facility where they've invested millions and millions and millions of dollars into making this happen. I don't think Disney's going to just throw that away. I think they could easily turn this around and go like, okay, it's just a hotel. Like Hannah was saying, it's just a Star Wars hotel. It's just a big hotel, and you check in, and you can stay 10 nights. You can stay one night. It doesn't matter, and you might, and somebody might knock on your door, and it's Mando and Grogu, and oh my gosh. And then other times you can do whatever you want on the thing. There's no theme. There's no story. There's no hanging out, because like I think. And this is kind of this. I'm sorry. I've got so many thoughts. They're just like there's so many things with this. It's just like, okay, why is this happening? Why are they doing this? Especially because it is. I think it is surprising that they basically have given up on this concept. I think they were perhaps as much crap as Disney gets for being, too capitalistic, too greedy, too much about just making money. I think maybe they generally went the opposite direction. I think they went as creative and as just enthusiastically creative about this that they possibly could. They literally gave their Imagineers just like, okay, do whatever, make this as immersive as possible. I think that's what you get. You have this whole thing. I was at the theater the other day, and on the giant screen there was a big advertisement for Galactic Starcruiser, and it does look really good. I mean, you get to hang out with Chewie and do this. You get to be a First Order officer and capture Chewie. Apparently, that's a thing you can do on the thing. That's a bit sketch, but ultimately, it's having your own Star Wars story. And from the testimonies that I heard, that'd be like it is truly immersive and incredible. Down for everything from the food to the living space, to the costumes, to everything. It's incredible. And to hear that, they've basically given up on this concept is great. But I think ultimately, it was too ambitious. I think that's probably one of the reasons, probably one of many reasons why it's happening. I think they're going to scale it back to something that is less ambitious, but still something along the lines of, it's more like, the other themed hotels they have at Disney World, where it's just like, oh, it's, I remember I stayed at the Rock and Roll motel once when I was a little kid. Like, that's a thing. They have different things. Like, so I think it's going to be more like that, which, yes, is not nearly as cool, but also won't be a once in a lifetime, save up your money all your life type of thing. It's going to be more open to people that aren't super rich. So I think that's ultimately good. And I really hope that, like, I wish they would do both. Wish would do okay, do the exclusive, super expensive one. And if you have the money, go and do it. But give us the regs, like a Star Wars hotel that we can actually afford. That's what we need.
I mean, it would be good too if it was like a tiered experience, which seems to work with like a lot of things. Like, you go to like a sporting event, for example. Like, you can pay like $10,000 for a whole luxury box and your own private waiters and such. Or, you can sit, really close up and pay like $1,000. Or you can pay a few $100s and be kind of in the middle. Or you might be able to find some tickets for $20 that's kind of further back. And so it's something that everybody can enjoy every price point. And, if you have more money and you prioritize that type of experience more in your life, you can get more. And if it's something that you want to do more casually, or, you want to experience it, but you don't have the money for it, then you have an option where you can at least experience some of it. Like, I think, and even like Galaxy's Edge is set up that way. Like, you know, you don't have to go in and, you know, drop $200 on the make your own lightsaber experience, or, you know, buy all the drinks at the cantina or such. You know, you can just walk around. You know, once you're in the park, you can experience a lot and go on a few rides, you know, without paying any more. And I think maybe if they had set up Galactic Starcruiser to have a tiered experience where, like, you know, you can stay there and you can kind of walk around and see some of the stuff and interact with a few things, and that's about it, you know. And it's cheaper and accessible. And then if you pay more money, you kind of can be kind of a bit more part of the story and have, you know, more like missions and things to interact with, and maybe some more better food and, you know, souvenirs and things that come with, like, you know, upgrade your outfit, get more stuff to wear. Like, you know, there's all these different add-ons that they could do to make more of the money and just compile the profit margins to pay for those more expensive experiences. But I think they really should have rolled this out as a tiered experience where there were different packages, because that's how everything else works. It's how Star Wars Celebration works. It's how Disneyland, Disney World works. It's how sporting events work. It's pretty sure that's how cruises work too. Like, you can have like a, you know, a cabin that's like massive and pay a bunch of money, or you can have a little small one and pay a little bit less, and different food packages and entertainment packages. And so it's just so odd that Disney can be so a la carte, and yet with this, it's literally like your only options are how many people are you going to squeeze in that room. You save a little bit of money if you go with somebody. Like, it's odd that they set it up that way.
Yeah.
Starcruiser.
Yeah, it's, I mean, because ultimately, I wholeheartedly disagree with everyone. It's like, good. I'm glad it's closing. I'm just like, no, this is an incredible experience. Yes, it was too expensive. Yes, they should have made it a bit more accessible. But I feel for everyone that like worked on this for probably years on creating this.
That's probably true. Yeah.
Because we heard about this for a long, long time. Of, oh yeah, Star Wars Hotel is happening, and then it finally happens, and then less than a year later, it's done. And you know, it's crazy and really, really sad that they couldn't make it work. I just hope that whatever comes after, they can make it work and make it accessible. And yeah, do a tiered system, do whatever. There's so many different options. The fact that it was just the one giant expensive option was not sustainable. Clearly.
Yeah, definitely. So we'll be
rest in peace, rest in peace, Starcruiser.
Yeah.
We barely knew ye.
So the next story that we have, I'm sad that on YouTube we can't play our intro to this. It might still show up in the podcast version. I'm not sure.
What's our intro?
There is we do have a rumor, but we're just gonna have to. Rumor.
They say you're gonna broken heart. Okay, there you go.
Yes.
Don't copyright it, YouTube, please, for the love.
Oh man. There's quite the rumor going around. So this is from is My Time to Shine Hello the person who broke this rumor?
Okay,
I
apparently,
think so.
Apparently this is where this comes from. I don't know who this person is or even if they're legit, honestly. It's just that they got a bunch of retweets and a bunch of people sourced them as the person who said this is the case. So take this as you will. This has also been debunked by somebody who is actually a scooper. So take it as you will.
So I guess it's something to be talked about just because, you know, it has so many retweets. I don't know if this is someone who maybe has been right in the past about things. Maybe that's one reason why people are talking about it. But on Twitter, this thing blew up that they're going to call Dave Filoni's movie Star Wars Heir to the Empire.
It's a good name. It's a good name, but I really actually don't believe it. I'm on that side. I'm on the side that's like, yeah, I don't think this is gonna happen, to be honest.
It's like it could be a few things here. It could be someone is just absolutely not legit at all. Either just like a shot in the dark and a shot towards something that could actually be happening. It could be something that's in the know that knows what they're talking about. This is actually a legit scoop that's happening. I don't know, but it's. I mean, I feel like it could happen. I feel like it's low hanging fruit. It's not exactly the most surprising title.
You know, I think they found it on the ground under the tree.
Yeah, I don't.
Yeah. But I think Joel mentioned to me at first before the show that Jeff Snyder, who does do a lot of scoops and stuff like that, he mentioned something about it and perhaps not being true. And I am still on. I'm still in the camp of that it will not be Heir to the Empire. That it'll be another type of things of Guardians of the New Republic, maybe that things, because that actually is an official title of some artwork of Luke, Ahsoka, and Din Djarin that they released at Celebration. That's a real title that they put out. So I don't know. I got my money on that one, but I mean, Ahsoka literally says "Heir to the Empire" in the Ahsoka trailer. Like it's it's canon.
I mean, there are a lot of reasons to use that title. Like, for one, it is canon, like you said. They're using the term, so bit of a foreshadowing there. Two, it is a well-known thing, so I mean, it makes sense. It is typical to take a book and then make it into a movie, even if it's sometimes just the concepts and not literally every word off the page. So it is a well-known word. So I mean that makes sense. Those are the reasons why I think it might be true and it would be a good idea. On the flip side to it, there's a few problems. One, obviously it's not very original. Like, you're just copying somebody else's title that Timothy Zahn most likely came up with. So that's kind of odd to have your own project that doesn't really have much to do with Timothy Zahn outside of a few characters and just use the same name. It seems like a bit of like plagiarism or something. But that's a bit of an issue. And then the second thing is, like, it does seem a bit odd to make a movie titled the same thing as a book when it's not really an adaptation of the book, when it's really just a few characters and everything else is completely different. Like, that does seem kind of odd to do that because people are going to hear that, Heir to the Empire, it's a book and a movie. Why, when I pick up the book, does it have literally a completely different story than the movie? Like, it's going to be very confusing to people, especially considering that the book is still in stores. Like, as the Star Wars Legends book, they are still selling Heir to the Empire. So you literally can watch the movie and then go read the book and then be like, wait, these are two completely different things. Like, that would be kind of a bit confusing. So, and I don't know, it would be kind of odd too for anybody who was really a big fan of the book. A lot of them are probably not going to like the movie solely because it's just not the book. So that's a bit of an issue too. So there's a lot of things going on here.
I agree with that point, and that's probably the point I'm most concerned about.
Yeah,
is if it is named that, like how divisive that would be. Because you're right, like it isn't an adaptation of the book or a direct adaptation, I should say. So people's expectations are gonna be, even if you say, hey, it's not the book, they're still gonna have that in their minds going into it if you've read the book. And, there's going to be like, oh, like that thing didn't happen and that character didn't do that. And I thought, they flew the ship. And what? They didn't crash it. There's going to be all those things that you kind of subconsciously compare. Have both of you, have you read the book?
Yes.
Read the book?
I've read the Thrawn trilogy. I read it a very long time ago, probably in like 15 years ago or so. And it's really good. Like, it's really good. It's actually, it's one of the few Star Wars books and groups of books that like I really, really like. Like, I'm actually not a massive fan of Star Wars publishing. It It's related to the fact that I don't have the patience to get through things that I don't like to get to things that I do. So, for example, there's definitely some good Star Wars books. I definitely believe that there are. But the ones that I've read, which are typically things that are tied into other things that are like movie or TV show related, like, for instance, like A New Dawn, which was a prequel to Star Wars Rebels and like things like that. It's just difficult. They're difficult reads for me. They don't really catch me. It's just, there's something about the writing of the characters in some of these books that it doesn't have the same, I don't have the same connection to it that I do have to them on screen for some reason. But I didn't feel that way about Heir to the Empire and the Thrawn trilogy. Like, I thought that Tim Zahn wrote the characters of Han, Luke, Leia, I think Lando was in that too. Yeah. Extremely accurately, extremely well, really added to those characters. And I thought that the new characters that he made, like Thrawn and Pelion and Mara Jade, were fantastic characters. Talon Card was another fantastic new character in those books. So it's a really compelling story, and they were really real page turners. And I would say that, for me, my experience of going through the Thrawn trilogy was kind of similar to going through Lord of the Rings. Like, I just kept reading until I was done. It took a while. It took like several days, maybe a week, but I just nonstop read every day until it was done, pretty much, because I was so into it and wanted to finish them. So they're great. So it is tough to take something that well known, and again, I will add some information that I don't know personally, but I've heard and I've kind of figured out. Historically speaking, those books mean a lot to a certain group of people in a certain generation, because they came out right between the first two trilogies in our world. Because you had, 1983 was the last Star Wars original trilogy movie, Return of the Jedi, comes out. It wasn't until 1999 that we had The Phantom Menace. The Thrawn books came out in the early 90s. And so they were right between those two. And that was like the big thing. That was the big Star Wars event. That's what kept Star Wars going and kept it new and alive and interesting in that period of those like 16 years between those Star Wars trilogies. 8 years in the middle of that, that's when those came out. So there was a whole group of people, just like you have now, like the Clone Wars generation and the sequel generation, the Rebels generation, and people, Disney Plus generation. There's a Thrawn trilogy generation that came into Star Wars, and that's their Star Wars. And then all of the books that then spun off of that, it spun off an entire universe of books. There's dozens and dozens and dozens of books from so many different authors that came out in the 90s and the 2000s based on what Tim Zahn started. And so it's huge. It still is huge. And that's why they still sell them, even though they're not canon. They still sell them. Yeah. And because there's such a big fan base for it. So to make a movie with that name, given how good that stuff is and how well known it is and how big a piece of Star Wars fandom it is for a certain generation of people, to make a movie with that name and have it be only have a few characters and that's it, and it's completely based on just new Star Wars canon, like, it's gonna trip some people out. It's not gonna, that doesn't seem like it's gonna land well for a lot of people.
And the thing is that from a purely business money-making perspective, I totally get why you want to have that name. It's recognizable. So much of media now is about brand recognition. That's why it's way more prevalent to have a reboot or a remake or a sequel or whatever, is because people know that thing as opposed to something new that you have to sell them on. You can make a movie titled Heir to the Empire and people will go, oh, hey, I know Heir to the Empire. I've watched that, whatever. But the thing is that the ethical and the creative side of that is the exact reason why you don't do that, is because you're getting the brand recognition of people know this thing, but it's not the thing. It's a different thing. and that's just not good. And you're gonna bring people in, you're gonna get more ticket sales, but then you're gonna turn a lot of people off the first weekend because they're like, this didn't have Talon Card in it. This didn't have Mara Jade. This doesn't have Yasamiri. You know, what the heck is this? And you can't blame anybody for being pissed off about that.
Yeah. So it's like, why just avoid all of that? Why go through all of that? Like, I understand creativity is creativity, and you want to call it what you want to call it, despite how people are going to react to it. But at the same time, if you want the creative liberty to name something whatever you want that makes sense, that's great. But it almost goes in direct contradiction with then taking somebody else's name.
What would you guys call it? What should be the name for this movie?
The Mandalorian, the movie.
This is a good question.
I've already said mine. Guardians of the New Republic. That's my ideal title. Or because going into the sequel trilogy, I was like Knights of the New Republic. It sounds like a cool title. And then it didn't happen.
Remnants of the Empire. That's probably what I would go with.
They do. Like, I mean, we haven't had an empire in a title since The Empire Strikes Back, I don't think.
And I feel like it's like, if we're talking about like that recognition, I feel like, especially when you see Star Wars and you see Empire, you go, oh, I know that concept. Like, for casual fans, they're like, oh, I understand that. Those two words together.
I wonder if we have something like, I don't know, Resurgence of the blank, Resurgence of the Empire. I don't know. Like we haven't. So that's a word that we've had Rise, we've had Revenge, Resurgence, I don't know. There's a lot of buzzwords, Star Warsy action words you could throw in there.
We're coming back. Yeah. Chris, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think, I think, I think it makes the most sense to call it just the Mandalorian.
Really, but my take is that it's not actually too connected. Like, I don't think he's going to be the main character.
Yeah, that could also be considered false advertisement because I expect Din Djarin and Grogu to be front and center in this movie.
Really?
Okay. They're not going to be the main characters per se. I think you're gonna have Sabine, you're gonna have Ezra, you're gonna have Carson Teva, you're gonna have a bunch of people. It's gonna be just call it the Star Wars. It's our Avengers movie, The Mandalorian. That's what it is. That's what it is.
The Rebellion Resistance. Resistance Rebellion.
At some point, it goes from one to the other. I think New Republic. I think having the term New Republic in it would make sense. I'm trying to think of what should go with that. Like,
Defenders of the New Republic. That's a bit too long.
I don't know if it should. It probably shouldn't refer to people because Star Wars movies don't start with words that refer to people. They end with words that refer to people.
And so Filoni would be very aware of that.
Yeah,
that's such a true.
Yeah, it's a tough one. I mean, obviously, Heir to the Empire is the best title for it because that's what Tim Zahn came up with.
Yeah.
Like, there's a reason why this is a rumor. It makes sense. If that title had never been used before, it would make sense. So I get it. The issue is it's been used before, and not in a tiny way like, Star Wars Underworld was a little comic, and there's a few other examples.
And someone else, I forget who said this in the comments, said, Matthew Hardy said they already used The Last Jedi in it was a Legends comic.
That's the other one I was thinking of.
My rebuttal to that would be that, like, no one had heard of that. No one had heard of that comic prior to The Last Jedi being a movie. So it's just the fact that you have a lot of EU titles. There's a lot of like titles, like everything from episode titles to comic book titles to book titles, but none are bigger than Heir to the Empire.
successor of the Empire,
Now we're paraphrasing.
inheritor of the Empire, beneficiary of the Empire. There we go.
Or would they pick another one of the titles? Dark Force Rising.
Yeah,
The
well,
Last
that's not
Command.
bad. The Last Command.
Both good titles and maybe less
Last Command is maybe
recognizable.
too-
But
yeah,
still, the EU fans will be like, yes, EU movie. And then it's definitely not going to be that. So back to square one.
Yeah.
Anyway. Oh, interesting.
So this is probably we're going to look back on this discussion and think, why did we talk about that? Because it was clearly false. But that's what we
so
do.
good. We've done that a few times. There's been a few things be like
we've
break
done
down
it
and
more than a few times.
Who is Matt Smith playing in the Rise of Skywalker?
Don't that's bad memories. Ugh.
So good.
Oh boy.
So that's that story. We'll have to see if more comes out about that.
Stay tuned.
We'll have to stay tuned on that one to see if there's more debunkings coming down the road or more corroboration.
Beneficiary of the Empire. I think that should be it.
Beneficiary of the Empire.
I just typed up synonyms of air.
Yeah,
That's all
that
that's what I was
makes
getting.
I would say
Division.
sky, space, wind.
Oh, air. Oh, come on.
Oh, jeez. I feel dumb for not catching that.
Air of the Empire. Ground of the Empire.
So moving on to some other stories. We're hearing a little bit about Kathleen Kennedy is talking again about future Star Wars projects, which means that this is probably should be in the rumor section, but we're going to talk about it anyway.
It came from her mouth, so I mean it's kind of canon once it comes, but also she's not saying much here, so all right. Take this as you will. I think most of the news this week came from Empire Magazine, which has been putting out a lot of Star Wars stuff recently. So she talked a little bit about kind of all the Star Wars movies or TV shows, or at least some of them that are in limbo. Because we've had like these tiers of Star Wars movies, like these. We have an announcement, and then that doesn't happen. Then we have another announcement, and that doesn't happen. Now we're all very naive in assuming that this other stuff's going to happen too, like Dave Filoni's movie. But I have faith, okay? I have faith. But
I'm
Kathleen
upset.
Kennedy about what?
Just at this story.
Well, okay, so we've got Kathleen Kennedy talking about Taika Waititi's movie. And he basically says Taika's working away. He's just, and he won't get mad at me for saying this, slow. We've got a couple of acts. We need a third. So Taika's writing? That's the story? He's still writing?
That's so
he was
funny.
wasn't he supposed to start
bizarre.
filming like last summer or something like that? Wasn't that the story? And then it just never happened.
I mean, this could be said. This is a matter of phrasing. This is how, if you have this information, this is how you can say it. I know that you guys have been anticipating this movie for a very long time, and I am excited to let you know that the first draft of the script is 2/3 complete right now. And we're super excited about it. That's all you have to say. That is a much better way to say it.
I don't know. I like the honesty. I like just the get to the point, not speaking in PR speak, just going straight to the point and going like, yeah, he's writing it and he's being slow about it. Oops. You'll have to wait a little longer for that movie.
Again, me, the publicist, would say, if Taika wants to make sure, and we want to make sure that this is a movie that fans come away enjoying. And so we are making sure that in the development process, we take the time necessary to write an extremely good script that is easy to shoot, that will not need a lot of retweaking, that people will like. That's what you say.
Mm.
You
Yeah.
can hire me, Disney.
Yeah, that was good. That would have been a great statement.
If you need a publicist,
Damn it.
it sounds
That's
like you don't have that.
classic. That's classic Kathy Kennedy speaking in press releases. You know, that's the stuff. I like the raw Kathy Kennedy. She's just giving it to us straight.
He's slow. We need another act from him. I'll update you guys later.
Yeah, I want to believe that Taika just turned in the script. Is like, I just got two acts. Like, we need a third, Taika. What are you doing? Needed to be 3 acts. So she also talks about Rogue Squadron and Lando. She says Lando's still in the books and Rogue Squadron is still in the books. We just want them to be great. So these two things we haven't heard about in a long time, and we also heard that one of them was definitely canceled, is apparently still in the books. She also talked about recently that Rogue Squadron could be a TV series. So that is a thing that could happen. I don't know, but it's good to hear that they're not completely canceled, I guess.
So Lando, it's been so long, I have to think, was this a movie or a show? This was a show.
This was announced way back at that Disney thing
in November,
where she's standing in front of screen and she announced Rangers of the New Republic and all those other things, some of which didn't happen, like a droid story. Whatever happened to that?
What?
Oh yeah, I forgot about that. Wait, a droid story? I've not thought about that in a year.
It's an animated show with Anthony Daniels. Like, just get some animators and get Anthony Daniels in the studio. How hard is that? Anthony Daniels do anything.
I feel like they just sent those people over to work on something else, like the Visions or the kids show, Star Wars Galaxy of Adventure Heroes. What
Correct me if I'm
Young
wrong.
Jedi
I believe did Visions get announced at the same time, or did it?
Yeah,
I feel like it did. Yeah, okay.
I think Visions was part of that announcement. Like almost everything that
2
we've
volumes
seen,
of Visions.
I think pretty much everything that we've seen on Disney Plus or are about to see was announced in that specific thing. They announced like 10 different projects.
I just cannot ever forget just watching Patty Jenkins rollerblade down a runway with an X-wing pilot helmet, being like, we're gonna fly through a galaxy far away and it's gonna be great. Like, I can't believe that exists. I just looked it up and watched it. This is what I can't believe this exists.
Yeah,
it's amazing that they went
rollerblades into the sunset with the bloody X-wing suit.
They went that far to make that video. They're like, they're so confident that it's gonna happen, and then
amazing video. Oh.
It's like the best trailer you can have is just the director just talking rollerblading.
It's so good. Oh, wild stuff, man.
Oh, and also she says Ryan Johnson's trilogy is still happening. Ryan and I talk all the time. He just keeps getting more and more successful, keeps moving things back further and further. One day we'll figure this out.
It's hilarious, dude.
I think the more I hear this, the less I believe it at this point.
You kind of look like Ryan Johnson.
What, me?
Yeah, you. Christy, get me here. Don't you think Bing looks a little like Ryan Johnson? You could be Ryan Johnson's son.
Yeah, a bit. Yeah.
First time I'm hearing this, but I'll
I
take it.
I just had to get that off my chest. I've been thinking about that for a while now.
Is it okay? I think it's kind of like short hair,
I did with a
haircut.
haircut. It's really got me now.
Yeah, I can see it.
Yeah.
See, I was the one person that didn't get a photo with Ryan that one time. Dang it! I could have been with my dad. I only touched fingers with my dad way across the way, like giving him my stupid.
You touched Ryan Johnson's fingers?
Well, barely. I gave him my my badge to sign. From
Oh, you didn't
And
just
your
like
fingers
kind of
almost
touched as
you
you
didn't just
handed
like do a little
the badge over.
tickle of fingertips. That's hilarious.
yeah.
Oh my
One day,
goodness.
Ryan, one day.
Oh.
Wow. So there's that one, and that so I don't know. I don't know what to say about these things anymore. Like, I don't even know what to say. Like, it's
Yeah.
just like
They're
I
just
just want to see a
there.
trailer. I
Yeah.
just want to, I definitely want to see a trailer for something. That's really all I care about. Until then, whatever. Say what you want to say. It doesn't mean anything to me. It doesn't.
We shall see.
Good stuff.
So we do have some unfortunate news that is not very surprising. Deadline is reporting that the start of production for The Mandalorian season 4 is likely to be delayed due to the ongoing strikes that are happening in Hollywood, specifically the writer's strike affecting that one. This is according to sources, says Deadline. The flagship Disney Plus series will likely push the start of production for season 4. While not officially announced, a 4th season has been fully expected. Series creator Jon Favreau confirmed earlier this year that the scripts for the new installment had all been completed. I hear filming on season 4 of The Mandalorian has been slated to begin in September. While there is some breathing room, I hear filming will likely be delayed. A rep for Lucasfilm had no comment. So this kind of goes back to what we've been talking about on the show and in previous weeks, about how all the episodes might have been written, you still need to have input from the writers as you're shooting the show. You might need to change things. You might need to work things out as things go. And so going into shooting season 4 without the writers being able to work is going to definitely lower the quality of the show. And that's most likely why, even though it might be finished per se in the writing process, you can't really just do it without the writers being able to work. So that this makes sense. Unfortunately.
Yeah, and this has been, and I heard from somewhere else that basically said like they really weren't expecting to start anytime soon, being things the way they were, and now especially seemingly we have maybe other divisions of Hollywood are striking, particularly the SAG.
Yeah.
So it's
going to shut down. Sounds like Hollywood's pretty much going to shut down at this point.
Come on. I mean, what are they going to do without actors and scripts? Like those are kind of
critical parts,
like pretty important parts of the filmmaking process.
I think Bollywood movies are going to get very popular.
Yeah. Gonna take over.
What about a Star Wars reality show, guys? Come on, let's do it.
I saw a great tweet. Who was it? It might have even been Steele that said, it might have been someone else. Before they close down Starcruiser, they should film a Big Brother Star Wars show in Starcruiser. And I'm like, that is hilarious.
That is
I would watch that.
Good idea. That's a very good idea.
Don't tell the studios, because that's a great idea, and I don't want to support them right now, but that's a really great idea.
It's true.
I've never really actually watched Big Brother before. When you watch Big Brother, is it evident that it's a house inside a building, or do they? Yeah. So you know that they're like in a giant like airport hangar, and then like the house is inside the airport hangar.
Oh, well, maybe it's probably different country to country, but no, the Australians one, it's like in like a tropical location, and like the house is kind of outdoorsy, but there's like panning shots when they like start the show or the episode. There's like you can see the complex like in suburbia or wherever it is.
But I don't know with the American one. I don't know if they make that clear or not, or if they try to make you think it's actually outside, like in a neighborhood.
Yeah,
like editing and such. Because it's like I've seen the actual house before, and it's inside a stage. Like
That's fascinating. Yeah, wow.
You're inside, and there's a house built inside.
Jeez.
Yeah.
The magic of reality TV.
Yeah. So
would they have to make a fake sun?
Oh yeah. Well, whenever if you see a window in a sitcom, that's.
See, but that's a sitcom. So, but in Big Brother, what? You guys are Big Brother.
Just get a big light. Just a big light and a smaller light.
So they don't see the light of day for 3 weeks. They're in there.
Definitely not, because here's the thing: if you could see the light of day, you'd hear sounds outside coming through the windows, like someone mowing their lawn and crap, and you can't have that on TV.
Also, how do you handle security? Like, how do you handle people just coming up randomly?
Just banging on the windows.
Yeah, you know what? I think the Australian one might have been filmed at near a theme park, so near like a industrial location. But it's still the house, like the main center of the house was outside. They had an outdoor pool and everything.
There are fake. There are also fake neighborhoods. Like there's a few around where I live.
What?
Where the entire neighborhood's not real. It's just constructed and it's behind a fence.
It's like Nuke Town in what is it, Nevada or something? Like just these fake towns.
It's like the Truman Show.
Yeah, it's
oh my god.
Well, I mean, it's not like there's people everywhere all the time, and you just walk down the street and like there's someone mowing the lawn. Like that's not what I'm talking about. I mean, like the structures are fake. Like they're false.
There's ghost suburbs. You're saying like ghost.
Yeah, I mean it's built specifically for production. It's like you said, near theme parks and sound stages and stuff. Like, by Universal Pictures is the one I'm thinking of. And that was, Wisteria Lane from Desperate Housewives, for example.
Right.
If you're like watching a sitcom and you see like someone just like, jogging down a sidewalk and there's a bunch of houses back there, it's likely that those houses have nothing inside them and it's just a controlled environment and it's not actually, they didn't go on location for that.
You're blowing my mind right now.
This is incredible.
Also, those court case shows, they're all acting.
Yeah, I think yes. I believe that one. I believe that one.
That makes sense.
That seems
fake. They're
okay, so get it back on track. The best docu-series with the worst name, Disney Gallery season 3, The Mandalorian. The Disney Gallery, The Mandalorian season 3, The Mandalorian Disney Gallery, whatever it is, whatever they call it.
You had it, and then you kept going.
I don't know.
It's just so long. It's just so many words.
I still, to this day, do not know what it's called. Okay, it's something.
It's because I'm reading it.
Disney Star Wars Manda Gallery.
If I wasn't reading it,
Manda Gallery.
Manda Gallery.
Disney Gallery. The
Mandalorian. There's literally any title you could come up with would be better. Speaking of titles, you should call that Heir to the Empire. Do better title. But it's back, okay? It's back. June 28th, we're getting a proper Disney Gallery about The Mandalorian season 3. So it begs the question, where the actual hell is the Disney Gallery Andor? Where is it?
That's right.
Dude, I would literally be more interested in that one. Like that would be phenomenal. Like to see especially I think it's been a little while since 3 years since we saw like kind of major location shooting for Star Wars shows. So I'd be super fascinated to see, how they set up in Scotland with the dam and everything. And Andor one would be so interesting. But Mando, eh?
Yeah. The only thing I could figure is that because Andor is like one of the few, if not the only, like multi-season series that we know where it's going, we know where it's going to end. Perhaps they're holding out for just like doing a big one after season 2 is done. Maybe
that makes sense. Didn't they do some like concurrent stuff for that, or like the sets are the same, or I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. It's
like a parts of season 2 already shot is my question.
Oh yeah, they've been shooting. I
But
saw.
I meant like as of when season 1 was released. Like, did they shoot some of season 2 while they were shooting season 1 because they used some of the same sets, or am I making that up?
I mean, it's possible.
So I'm making that up.
Sometimes,
Okay.
I
Never
mean,
mind.
sometimes they'll go and like hey, we're not going to be in this location. I guess they'll shoot. I mean, like if they knew they were going to do it, I guess if they had the script, then they could do it. But I don't think there's been any like news about them doing that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So yeah. So I can't really. The one thing that I can think of why they might have had trouble is like I think Andor was really released like at that peak of like or really filmed at like the peak of lockdowns, because like they couldn't they had to change around like some of the directors for the episodes because they couldn't get them from America to Britain to film. So I'm thinking maybe that affected the behind the scenes crew in some way. Maybe like the people that usually direct the Mandalorian gallery and/or special edition thing. They maybe they just they're an American crew that couldn't go to Britain because of they just literally couldn't get over there during that time.
Right.
So that could be an explanation too for why it didn't happen.
We know COVID made everything a lot harder. And, even season 2 of The Mandalorian Disney Gallery was like much shorter because of COVID and because they couldn't put everyone in one room and do it. This is a thing.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Yes.
So that's coming up. That's exciting. June 28th, Disney Gallery, The Mandalorian Season 3 will be released. This is like a nugget of a story, like a tiny crumb of a story, but it is kind of interesting. In an Entertainment Weekly interview, Filoni said about the possibility of Ahmed Best returning as Kelleran back in The Mandalorian. It's always a possibility. We love Ahmed. He did such a great job. It was a real thrill for us to get him involved. So kind of ambiguous, but
what my
better
question?
Than saying no. It's not
well,
going to
yeah.
happen.
I mean, when have they ever said, "Oh, this person's never coming back. We hate this person. We definitely never going to return." My question here is just like, how do you get Kelleran back? I assume we will get more of his and Grogu's story after they go into hyperspace. Where do they end up? How does because Grogu gets from there to he's with a bunch of pirate dudes on that planet with Queel, and they're holding him hostage or protecting him, like seemingly protecting him for something. So what goes on there? But also, did Kelleran survive? Could he be? I think it would be really interesting if it would kind of take the pressure off of characters like Luke Skywalker. If there was another Jedi character out there that was that could be an ally to things and could play into this new movie, how cool would it be to have Ahmed Best, playing an older version of Kelleran back in this new era? And who knows where you could take that, but I do wonder, are we getting Kelleran back just to have him killed off during the purge later? I don't know.
Yeah, that is really fascinating, but I would like to see him as well again. I think that'd be pretty cool.
They definitely set up that scene that you can tell more of a story there. Like it's very like the way it's like, oh, we got to get there. We got to do this thing, and then we never saw like what we're pointing out here, like that what happens after that flying away. So yeah, it definitely feels like that was left open ended, like an unfinished sentence kind of thing.
Yeah, it was. So that'll be interesting to see. Always a possibility that we might. This one, not a possibility, but something definitely that is happening. Actor Jaleel White has confirmed that he's going to be in Star Wars Skeleton Crew. He's going to be playing a pirate. He was asked this. This information came out of a hockey game. I don't. Did Dominic write this story?
He was like he was like doing a hockey game, like he was like guest of honor or something.
He said, "I'm actually going to be in a new series on Disney Plus starring Jude Law called Skeleton Crew. Yeah, it's coming out in November, and it's part of that. Wait, did we know that?
No,
Is the
so
lead
that
buried?
came out of the story.
No,
well.
we did not know that. He says
The lead
November,
has been
or
buried.
November, December.
So the so that's the big story, guys. Skeleton Crew coming out November or December. Breaking news. Huge.
I mean,
huge
we knew
information here.
Ahsoka's coming in August, and also there's a story out that like I think it's August 30th, 31st, whatever the last day of the month for August, which is kind of par for the course for Disney Plus. They tell us it's going to be in 1 month, and they're like it's going to be the last day of that month. So that's the rumor there, and then you have a couple months later. It would imagine Skeleton Crew would come along there. So I don't think this is huge news, but it is like more definite than Lucasfilm has gotten.
It's more precise.
But also, let's not also ignore the fact that Steve Urkel is in Star Wars, guys. Okay, that's the thing. That's
the guy.
For those who don't know, Jaleel White is Steve Urkel from the classic sitcom Family Matters. Okay, that's the lead here.
I don't know either of those things.
He's also in the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. He's also in Psych.
Also, the voice of Sonic the Hedgehog, I think, or something.
Yeah, wow. And but I think the most his critical work here is Mega Shark versus Crocosaurus. Like,
of course.
Didn't
we get that? Didn't we
Holy
get
crap.
that in the first episode of season 3 of The Mandalorian? Mega
yeah, I think that was the title of that
Crocosaurus
episode.
something?
I'm pretty sure that was the chapter name. Mega Shark versus Crocosaurus.
Yeah.
Also, I have things to say about Ahsoka. Because I have a counter theory. I know we're not really talking about Ahsoka right now, but I want to talk about it anyway. I have a counter theory to this. Oh, it's coming out on the 30th or 31st or whatever. I think it's coming out on August 10th. And this, I do have to give you credit for I did a stream yesterday talking about this, and people in the comments, we kind of pieced this together. And with this theory, 2 major points here of why it's going to be August 10th. Let's go back to 2008. The Star Wars The Clone Wars movie releases August 10th of 2008. We know Star Wars loves their dates and numbers meaning something. So that feels like it would make sense that it would come out the same day like the series thing movie came out, and it's Ahsoka and it's Dave Filoni is there. So that's a pretty that makes sense. The other thing is, what's the series? Loki. That's right. The Loki series is starting October 2nd, some date around there. And there's 8 episodes of Ahsoka. If Ahsoka was to debut in August 31st, it would be overlapping with Loki.
Yeah.
Like the end of it. But if it was August 10th, it wouldn't overlap and there would be like a week buffer. And I think from my perspective anyway, I think with the Mando change of times and Survivor changing when that's coming out, I don't think they like the overlap. And especially when it comes to with the competing franchises of Marvel and things like that, I think they don't want that overlap, and they do really want Star Wars to be on its own. So it's in their interest to make sure that Ahsoka isn't overlapping with Loki from my point of view. So August 10th, those 2 things cross at that point. If it starts August 10th, it won't overlap, and then August 10th is the date that the Clone Wars movie came out. That's my theory.
Premiere. That was the red carpet date, and then it was released on the 15th.
Correct. Yeah.
Theater. So 5 days apart there. Neither of those days though fall on a Wednesday.
Yes, the 10th is because the Wednesday's a 9th though. I think
the 9th and the 16th are the Wednesdays. Yeah. So that's the only thing. If they keep with that same release schedule, releasing Star Wars on Wednesday, you'd think that week makes sense, and it does make sense to release it the week that the Clone Wars movie came out. So I think that's a very good theory. I don't know if it would be the 10th specifically, just because
it's
Star
not a
Wars
Wednesday.
doesn't come out on that day. But the
I
9th, I can see that, and also for you, it will be the 10th. I think.
Yes, I think that's why I was like, oh my god, that works.
Yes.
But I was like, oh wait, no, this would technically be the 9th.
Yes,
but for me, it would be the 10th.
It would be the 10th for you. So for you, it works. It actually is the correct date that it premiered at the Egyptian Theater in 2008, which was 15 years ago.
Attended by Forrest Whitaker and J.J. Abrams in 2008.
What's going on? Do they all sit down and be like, hey, we're going to make something in 10 years?
Just insane.
Fascinating.
Insane.
That's really fascinating. Points to anybody that went to see the premiere of the Clone Wars movie. That means you get a Star Wars fan card if you went to that.
Wait, I don't even have one of those. How do I get one of those? I want an official Star Wars fan card. What is this madness? I'm a Star Wars guy, damn it.
Cord. Oh, is that just the way you said card?
No, I'm angry.
Card.
That's cool. You're saying cord.
Star Wars fan card.
Star Wars fan cord.
Star Wars fan card.
Oh my goodness. It's a Star Wars fan card. That's what I'm talking to that. Star Wars fan card.
God. It's the card.
It's a cat. That's... there you go. Now you can understand. So that's cool.
Yes. Anyway,
a few other ones real quick we'll mention before we get to our question and answer segment. Jude Law said a few things about Skeleton Crew. Talking to Empire Magazine. We talked about it. It's about kids who are looking for an adventure. To them, their planet is normal and they want more, but that's not always a good thing to want. The way Kathleen explained Amblin to us was that they never thought of those as kids' movies. They just happen to have kids. So all the stakes are as real as possible. The kids think they're in Andor. You ready for this, Hannah? You ready for Andor with kids? Oh dear.
Those of you listening cannot see the face palming going on.
I'd be in physical pain.
So, they didn't say it is Andor. It just says the characters think they're in the TV show Andor, which is real weird because Andor isn't a show in Star Wars. But like, are the kids like, yes, we think that this is like that show Andor? Is that a correct quote from the kids?
I think what he's saying here is like, the stakes feel very adult in the way that, like, say in Stranger Things, you're trying to save the world, you're trying to save your town, your state. Like, it's not just a little caper going on.
That wasn't set up. The mountain people are gonna get upset if we don't come see the sky meteor shower. Like, there's no context.
Right.
Yeah.
I think just generally speaking, I think it's like Star Wars is ridiculous, but the characters in Star Wars take it very seriously, generally speaking, unless you're Han Solo. So this seems par for the course.
I like Amblin. I like Steven Spielberg. I think this is going to be great. What's
Amblin? I thought that was like a Renaissance queen. What am I thinking
Amblin.
Amblin? What do you say? Is that one word?
Amblin Entertainment.
There's only
Amblin.
two. I'm putting it on the.
Type it to me.
Have you seen movies?
The language
Hannah?
barrier.
Have you seen
the language
movies?
barrier is so bad. Amblin. That's not at all what you were saying. Amblin.
Amblin.
You were saying Anne Boleyn. Isn't that a person?
Yes, I like those movies Amberlin makes. Yeah.
Man, this whole story, and I'm like, why are they referencing this like random character? Yeah, Queen of England. That's what I'm thinking of. Bloody hell. Yeah,
the
Anne
way
Boleyn.
Kathleen explained Anne
And I'm
of
like,
Berlin to
how
us.
is this kid adventure Star Wars show like a medieval queen? Like, no wonder I was confused with this statement.
That's hilarious.
Oh, Anne Boleyn. Anne Boleyn. That's hilarious. You gotta give me
Anne
credit.
Boleyn.
That's close. Anne Boleyn.
It is.
Anne Boleyn.
Anne Boleyn.
It's
Anne
it's
Boleyn.
it's
Yeah.
it's
Come on.
It's only one
come
letter
on.
different, and
the
a
how
little
many
bit of a-
syllables are in it depends on how you say it.
Anne Boleyn. Anne Boleyn.
Anne Boleyn down the road. It sounds like an actual word, but it's not. But it sounds like a word.
Like,
Anyway, I like that, so I think this is cool. This excites me.
We'll just go. We'll run through this really quick.
Yeah.
All I wanted to mention is like Natasha Liu Bordizzo talked about
Yes.
wielding a lightsaber.
Yes.
Like that's kind of confirmed. It was kind of out there in the leak trailer, but and we know from Rebels that Sabine has Ezra's lightsaber, so she's probably going to be using it. And there's even some shots in the trailer of that. So that seems to be, and she talked a little bit about it with Empire Magazine. So that's pretty cool. And then Joel Edgerton's like, "Hey, I owe a lot to George Lucas because he cast me in Star Wars, and now I'm a big actor." And then I came back to Star Wars. So that's cool.
It's cool considering that sometimes Star Wars gets negative press about like potentially ruining actors' careers. So it's nice to hear all the people who made their careers and not have all that going on. So that's
right.
Awesome.
It's nice that it made some careers and also ruined some.
All right, it's time for your favorite segment.
Ben's Connection Corner.
Ask
not
SWU.
that favorite segment, not that one.
So this is the segment where we read your super chats and we read your Discord messages. We already have a bunch of super chats already queued up, so we'll start with those, and we'll also get to some great Discord messages that we got on our server throughout the last few days. And everyone in the live chat here, feel free to super chat and add to the discussion that we're having, or if you want to bring up anything, we will talk about it. So Joel is coming in with the first super chat of the evening. Joel says, "I think this Thrawn adaptations, quote unquote, will be a bare bones minimum adaptation, basic concept of Thrawn attack, but everything else is different." I agree. I don't think they're going to copy that much of it. And if anything, I feel like some of the loose concepts from the Thrawn trilogy, if anything, are going to be sprinkled into the rest of the MandoVerse and not just concentrated in this movie. Like, for instance, what Gideon was doing in season 3 with the cloning and creating clones of himself and trying to and giving clones force powers by cloning Grogu, like that, those are ideas that are very similar to concepts from the Thrawn trilogy, and that's already been introduced and almost perhaps has reached a conclusion already. So I think that's very likely that's all we'll see. Is just Thrawn and a few characters like Pelion.
I think Filoni will, as he's done many times, is pull from the EU and pull specific elements. Not like this is a direct adaptation of Heir of the Empire. Yeah. We're taking elements just as they have done for heck. They were talking about bringing the Yuuzhan Vong into Clone Wars once. That was the thing that almost happened. Apparently, like there's sketches of it. So Filoni was all about that. So there's some there's a shot in the Ahsoka trailer of just some ships kind of dropping into hyperspace, and people are like, "Oh, what if that's the dreadnoughts from Dark Force Rising and The Last Command? Like, what if that's all that?" I'm like, that's a very real possibility. They could do something similar to that. Not maybe not even call them dreadnoughts, but be something similar in the same vein of the broad strokes of Thrawn's back. He's building an army. He wants to take back the Empire. He's got some bunch of ships, and the New Republic's in trouble.
Yeah.
Yep. I have little to say and add to this discussion, oddly, because I haven't read Heir of the Empire. So,
spoiler alert! Sorry.
Oh no, that's so fine. That's so fine, dude. It's been out for like 35 years.
It's been
Actually, when did it come out? What did we say before? Was it
91?
91. Oh, gee, that is
old as I am.
That really? I just thought I was about to be like, oh, that's really old, but then I just had the thought, oh my god, isn't that like the age of these guys?
It's older than me. It's older than me.
It came out right around the same time I was
born.
That's
not your birthday, your birth year, is it?
Yep, 1991.
I'm learning so much.
That's the only context in which I would say when I was born.
That's the reference.
It's when Heir to the Empire came out.
Ben, when was your Star Wars media thing? What is the year of Star Wars media that is in reference to your birth year?
I think Dark Force Rising.
Yeah.
I gotta go Google that now.
So I am the Heir to the Empire. Ben is the Dark
Hold on a second. I'll tell you.
Rising.
I'll tell you. Hold on a second.
And I'm the Phantom Menace.
And you're the Phantom Menace.
Yeah.
Tell you.
Or Star Wars Racer 1.
I actually forgot you were a 90s kid.
I milk it so bad. I'm like, it was a great decade. So much fun.
Snuck in there.
We get to play out on the street every week. Every week.
Every day.
Every week.
This is interesting.
On the street.
Mercedes Verdano was born. Macy Richardson Sells was born. I didn't know we were the same age. Daisy Ridley is born. I didn't know that. Adria Harna is born. The glove of Darth Vader. I didn't know I was as old as the glove of Darth Vader. Wow. That's interesting.
Oh, 92.
And a bunch of other things. But Dark Force Rising is probably the biggest.
Fascinating.
I am amazed.
Get it. I was trying to All right. Never mind.
I just can't believe how much we're like the Bad Batch. We are literally the Bad Batch. This is amazing.
Yes. So next thing Joel has sent us. Thank you, Joel, for the second super chat. I sometimes wonder if Disney isn't putting pressure on Lucasfilm to make films yet. Oh, 100%. 100%.
Hang on.
If
Disney isn't putting pressure, so they're not putting on. You're wondering if they're not putting pressure on Lucasfilm.
Yeah, they're definitely. They can't be because they're after the purchase of 20th Century Fox. They acquired so many movies. Between all of the things that they owned, they were able to fill up the theaters completely fine. Like literally, it seems like Solo seemed like an inconvenience. When they put Solo out, there were so many other Disney movies coming out like within that season that it almost felt like, oh shoot, we need to find a spot to put Solo in. Where do we put it? Let's put it Memorial Day weekend, right? A few weeks before this, a few weeks after that, and another thing coming in a month. And we know how that turned out. So I feel like kind of after that, they finished up with Rise of Skywalker because that had a very specific slot. Everything that hadn't been slotted yet was just like, where do we put it? Where do we put it? We have the Marvel stuff. They are all slotted for the next 5 years. We have James Cameron stuff that's slotted for the next 10 years. We have Indiana Jones already coming up from Lucasfilm at some point. And then there's all the original Disney stuff, the animated stuff, the live action stuff, all of the Pixar movies, and all the franchises that would have been under 20th Century Fox. And it turns out it's like a movie every week almost. So it makes sense to, after The Mandalorian did so well, and the Disney Plus numbers just skyrocketed way beyond any expectations, for them just to say, all right, Star Wars is our Disney Plus thing. We got the movies. They're all slotted out. They're going. Let's just make Star Wars a Disney Plus thing for several years. And I think that's what happened. I don't think that Iger and Chapek, and I don't think they really needed movies.
You know what? I think about the conversation. This was when I was a fan of the Underworld that I listened to this conversation.
You're not a fan of the Underworld?
Oh, she hates us now.
How dare you? The truth comes out.
God. When I
When I
started
liked
to
those guys.
become a fan of the Underworld, an episode when, oh God, I couldn't even place a time, maybe in 2021, maybe even 2020, when we talked about, it was well, no, it would have been 21. I think COVID was kind of starting. It was kind of, we're all locking down, all those kinds of things. And you had a great discussion about, the state of kind of movies, and movies were starting to be, do that thing where they were like released on Disney Plus and you like paid like $30 to watch the movie
Right.
and all those kinds of things. And you had this discussion around like, how is that going to shape media like going forward in the next couple of years? And it's been actually fascinating. Because I think just what you said there, Chris, about they just after 2019 they were like, okay, let's just take the foot off the accelerator there. Like it's almost like they went, well, that was a bit much, wasn't it? Like they had that, well, it was a little intense, and then they obviously went hard in the shows and the series. But I am not sure where this point was going, but it was just about how that's interesting. And that's an interesting concept.
See, I actually don't totally agree. I think that obviously they did take their foot off the gas coming out of Rise of Skywalker. But they were kind of forced to do that eventually. They may have planned something to happen. Maybe if the pandemic hadn't happened, we may have got something maybe by now. But the fact that COVID happened was like, okay, well, that's definitely not happening now. Just hang that up and let's focus on streaming. I think they were glad to launch Disney Plus and have Star Wars, have a new Star Wars thing, this new thing coming after Rise of Skywalker that was just only on Disney Plus. And I think for a while, they probably didn't put a lot of pressure on Lucasfilm. I think that has changed recently. I think all this rumblings about movies, stuff like that. I think good old Bob Paycheck, I think, was like, you better make a movie. Like this is getting out of hand. We've had several years, and they're just seeing, like, how can you not look at all the merch and all the hype around the Mandalorian and other shows and go like, that could be translated into like ticket sales, and it's not. And we can't like things, and that's why we're getting basically a Mandalorian movie with Dave Filoni's movie. So like, that's the whole thing.
And kind of in the same vein, I actually understand and actually pretty much agree with what you're saying there. I really wonder what the release or showing of Return of the Jedi in theaters, what that taught them. I'm very fascinated to what did they take away from that? Yeah. Because, fascinating numbers out of that. Like they made like a good few million on.
It was only in a handful of theaters, really.
Handful of theaters for like 10 days. And like just like made like it was
like 5 million?
5 million, but I think it was still going at that point. So maybe made 6 or 7 million. Like what would they learn from that? Like what would they take from that? It is interesting what the pressure is for now.
I think re-releases, like I know Avatar, for example, was re-released in theaters. So that's definitely something that studios will do sometimes. It's kind of surprising that Star Wars doesn't do it more often. Now, Star Wars, of course, has probably one of the most famous histories of re-releases because prior to The Phantom Menace, all 3 of the original films were re-released and made an incredible amount of money. And of course, it was a big deal because they also were edited differently and such,
right?
With new effects and things, and they were remastered. So I'm surprised that there isn't more of that going on. I'm surprised that they didn't continue the project of releasing all the movies in 3D. Like, I'm surprised they cut that off. Like, I don't understand the math behind that. And I guess it just, I guess it costs more than they were making or something. But to me, it seemed like they were popular. But I'm biased because, like, I went opening night. So it was where all the, very passionate fans were there. And it made it seem like the biggest thing ever. Because, Phantom Menace re-release in 2012 was the first opening night movie I'd ever been to in my life. And it was quite the experience.
Yeah.
So, I wish there was.
I mean,
more.
and they were absolutely setting up for starting with the Phantom Menace. We're gonna do all the movies, all 6 movies, 3D re-release that may have just been a repeat of the special editions because George was probably planning to use that to finance his sequel trilogy at the time, which was probably his plan to make his own sequel trilogy. It wasn't until Disney hadn't entered the picture yet. So, it's fascinating to think about. But I see my local theaters always like, we got this movie, that movie, older movies back in theaters. They put Harry Potter movies back in theaters.
Fandom events.
And watching Return of the Jedi, which I had never seen before in a theater on a big screen. I hadn't seen any of the original trilogy in the theater, and it was amazing. And I'm like, why they need to do this more often? Like, this is, and also just the fact that I hadn't seen Star Wars on a big screen in quite some time, and I really miss it.
Yeah, definitely.
Fascinating.
Another one is coming from Joe. Super chat. Thank you, Joe. I heard that some of the skeleton crew issues were because they wanted it filmed and shot before the strike could affect it. That makes sense. We've heard about them rushing things and trying to get things done before.
I suppose makes sense because that's been looming for a while. Is the strikes. And yeah, Skeleton Crew, there's some kind of messed up stuff going on behind the scenes. Unfortunately, that I hope it's not true. I'm not saying like don't believe the people that have said it. I'm just like I hope what I've heard is not true because it's not great what we've heard. But I hope Skeleton Crew is good, but it may be maybe that's spurred on the strikes because that's all part of it. Working conditions and pay, it all goes hand in hand.
Yeah, that does make sense. There'd be a lot more pressure to get things done if you expect that you're gonna have a deadline that's sooner than you originally thought. So that's the whole thing is unfortunate, and it's like the problem becomes the solution. The whole reason why the writer's strike and other looming strikes needed to happen was because of situations like this. So it's kind of like going around in a circle causing itself, which is kind of an interesting way to look at it. We also have some Discord comments that people have left us. And if you want to leave us comments on Discord, once again, you can do that by joining our server, which you can find in the link to that in the description and notes for all the podcasts and everything. And the Ask SWU section is in there, which is where we're pulling these from. So our first Discord questioning comes from our good friend Star Raptor, Mr. Chris Abbott, asking, do you think Galactic Starcruiser would have been more successful if based during the original trilogy era with a different design of the ship itself to match that aesthetic?
Yes.
This is one of my issues with Galaxy's Edge. Like, I love that the Falcon is there, and I think being able to be in the cockpit of the Falcon and the Smuggler's Run ride is, one of the best experiences at Galaxy's Edge. Definitely one of their flagship experiences. But the rest of it is very much in either new Star Wars era or is made to kind of be its own thing and seem like it's in the Star Wars universe, but it doesn't try to copy specific on-screen things. And I feel like if Galaxy's Edge itself had sections where it's like, oh, you're on Tatooine, oh, you're on Coruscant, oh, you're on Endor, that would have been a better way to theme it. I think I would have liked that more. And I think Galactic Starcruiser is the same way. I think that if it was billed as, you can imagine if they had like a bunch of like Millennium Falcons and they were like suites and you could actually, you have like some hotels are like a giant like traffic cone or a giant like teepee or something. Imagine you just had a bunch of Falcons just out there and yes, you could just, the whole Falcon's yours. And you could just stay in the Falcon for as many days as you want, and you just pay per day, and you just sleep in there like they would, the crew would, in little bunk beds, and you just get to be in the Falcon and push all the buttons and interact with the Falcon, and maybe there's a little mission that you can do, and that would be really cool.
That would be really cool.
That probably would have.
But like this, this idea. Funny enough, I just looked up the Middle Earth map of Lord of the Rings, and I was just because I was trying to think of like an analogy that would be similar. It's like if we made a Lord of the Rings land, and we were going to make this like flagship, fantastic overnight experience, and you choose a town that wasn't shown in the movies or kind of you went to in the books or anything. It's kind of like that in my mind, because it's just like I get it's Star Wars theme, it's in the galaxy, but it's like I often think like, what if they made it like what you're saying, Millennium Falcon themed or Tainted 4 themed, or even like a Clone Wars, like, you know, Republic, just a generic Republic cruiser theme.
Yeah, that
was more familiar for super fans. We would be very familiar with the door frames and the sounds and what parts look like. I don't know. I often think about that. It's interesting.
Yeah, it's because you see a lot of chatter about this online, and a lot of people will approach this from the very, let's just say, cynical and toxic point of view of, well, why didn't they theme it after the original trilogy? Because the original trilogy is the only thing in Star Wars that anybody ever cares about. And that obviously is not the case for anybody who is in Star Wars fandom. But I do get the argument of just like, and I think maybe Galaxy's Edge is, if you could kind of boil down the problem with Galaxy's Edge, and I'm not saying it's a perfect experience. I love Galaxy's Edge. I could spend all day, every day there. Like, it's amazing. But I do, coming out of them, like, I've been to both of them, like, there's something missing. There's something not quite there. And obviously there is a lot of open space there. There's stuff to add. There's room to add more stuff. And I'm assuming they add stuff. They had Rise of Resistance, which was added later. It's great. But there is that added punch of like, it's kind of generic. If you kind of being honest, it's kind of just like, it's just another planet. It's not something you really latch onto. They're taking a planet they can kind of paint their own stuff into. And obviously it's in canon. They've put books and comics there, and they've done all this stuff in canon to make it so that it's embedded in the story itself, and it feels like on a planet that you can go to, and you can also read about it. You can watch it on, you know, I'm sure it's going to be in a TV show or movie at some point too, probably. But like, it would connect with people more if it was just Tatooine. If it was just like, okay, it's Tatooine, and there's the Mos Eisley, the canteen, and you go in and you see the modal nodes, and also you go outside, and it's Florida, and it feels really hot because that's how Tatooine is. So, you know, that would make sense. So I get that thing. I know that like they would have to pick a lane if that was the case, and it would break the immersion because it's not literally going to be that. If you have a bunch of Millennium Falcons in a park, that kind of breaks the illusion that there's only one Millennium Falcon.
Yeah, I see what you're
and that's
saying.
what they're all. That's they're trying to drive home this. That's why the Galactic Starcruiser was what it is. It's because it's this trying to create this false reality, kind of create that. And, you know, props to them for trying their best. But I think Disney could use a dose of reality every once in a while. Just be like, maybe just give people what they want, and just, you know, immersion be damned. Just let people, you know, be on the Millennium Falcon, or go to the Mos Eisley Cantina or whatever else. You know, there's that big thing that's floated around for years of this Star Wars land, and it's Endor over here and Tatooine over here. Like, that sounds great. Also breaking immersion spectacularly, but it would have been cool. It'll be interesting to see, because I think Batuu in itself is designed to be able to change the eras, and they're already playing around with it, being that Now Mando and Grogu are hanging out in the same space that Rey was hanging out in, a couple years ago. So, they're designing it to do that, but like, how are they going to keep up with that? And now that we're going into another era of movies, are they going to be theming it around are we going to go back in time in Batu and go to 25,000 years before with James Mangold's movie? Like, how are they going to do that?
So everything was set up well. The foundation for all of these ideas that they had after Disney took over, they were good. This idea of we're going to release a new trilogy and we're going to create a new foundation for Star Wars for a new generation, just like George Lucas did once with the original Star Wars and again with prequels. And then we're going to make a theme park that is going to match the same time frame and themes and characters of this new trilogy. Like, that makes a lot of sense. And when the park first came out, super successful. You couldn't, the wait times for the rides when they first came out were just incredible. And these movies made billions and billions and billions of dollars. Some of the biggest movies ever released in history. And there is such a large amount of fans of the sequels, especially in the generations that were, too young to have maybe the Clone Wars or the prequels be kind of their introduction to Star Wars. So everything was going really well. And then I think they made a critical mistake. They did something that was just not a good idea, and I don't understand why they did it. To this day, I don't get why they did it. And that is, they decided to rewind the time in Star Wars and start releasing stories and their flagship stories before the sequel era. And mainly, this has to do with the choice to have The Mandalorian be the first show released on Disney Plus and have that be the flagship show for Star Wars and the flagship property for Star Wars, and have Mando and Grogu be the face of Star Wars starting immediately at the same time as the sequels were ending. Like, that just blows my mind that they did that, because they took all the momentum and the wind out of the sails of the sequels, which were going very, very well financially. They were selling so much merch. There was just Kylo Ren things everywhere. And remember BB-8, guys? Remember before Grogu when everybody had a BB-8 this or a BB-8 that instead? And then it just disappeared and it's gone now. And it's like, good luck finding anything BB-8 themed in a general store now. It's all Grogu. Like, why? What happened? Like, this whole thing with the Halcyon, and Black Spire Outpost, all this Disney stuff. This is the fallout of that decision, I think, to just abandon, like, this wholesale abandon investing in the sequel era and tie-ins to the sequel era and continuations of the sequel era. If they had doubled down on it and said, yeah, there are some people that, it's not their cup of tea. There's some people that, don't like Last Jedi or don't like Rise of Skywalker or whatever. But if they had doubled down and said, this is Star Wars, Rey is the Jedi character, Kylo is the villain anti-hero character, BB-8 is your cute sidekick character, and then you've got, love interests and, some questions about Force use and like some other characters and some good supporting cast. They had just done that and just said, this is Star Wars. Everything we're putting out is going to look like this. I think that we wouldn't be having some of these problems now. I think everything would be a lot more cohesive. It would make a lot more sense. And also, I think it would have added into the enjoyment that people, appreciation people have for the sequel movies. I remember time and time again saying, as the Clone Wars was being released between 2008 and its original set between 2008 and 2013, I remember saying, I am so glad this is coming out because it makes me like the prequels movies more. It makes the prequel movies stronger. Knowing more about Anakin and Obi-Wan and their relationship, and Padme and Anakin and their relationship, knowing more backstory about General Grievous and where he came from, and Dooku and what his motivations are, and what the Emperor, what Sidious is really doing behind the scenes, and the brilliance of his plan, and the clone troopers, and making them not just these automatons and helmets like stormtroopers, but giving them all these personalities. It took the prequel era and it made it just as good, if not better for me, than what George Lucas did in his original run with the movies in the 70s and the 80s. It made the universe so big. If they had had shows and other movies and spin-offs and just doubled down in the sequel era like that the same way, I think that we would, whatever issues people would have with the sequels would kind of evaporate, because they would kind of see them in a new light, see them as kind of more complete and making more sense if things were kind of added in, all the little bits and pieces. If we had a show with Finn in it about him becoming a Jedi, people wouldn't care that plot line was dropped in in Rise of Skywalker anymore. They'd be like, this is so awesome. You get to see the beginnings of him starting to figure out, and then you watch the show and you see him really figure it out. And it just would take that whole problem why so many people don't like that movie would just be gone immediately. And just like people have this problem of, what's going on with Padme and Anakin and Obi-Wan in their relationship. And it seems kind of like they moved really fast with those characters between Attack of the Clones and Revenge of the Sith, and some of their decisions don't quite make sense. Then after watching the Clone Wars, they do. It makes sense. You feel it more. It feels more real. Same thing. So that's what I think is really going on here. It's not just the fact that it's not the original trilogy, to get back to the original question. Right. That's not the only issue. It's that they invested in building theme park experiences for an era that they left behind and abandoned and might not get back to for many, many years until they bring Daisy Ridley back to do something that's not even in that era, but probably a new generation, another reboot, another group of Star Wars fans is going to come in from that. And then it's going to be nostalgia for the people that grew up with the sequels, and not necessarily a continuation of their fandom for them specifically. That's, I think that's why this is all happening.
Yeah. And I just look back, I'm like, when did Galaxy's Edge opened? You have Galaxy's Edge was the opening theme of it was the sequel trilogy. It was First Order Stormtroopers and Rey and Kylo Ren walking around and all this kind of stuff set in the sequel era, older Hondo in there and all this kind of stuff, the Millennium Falcon. And then you have this, it opens in March of 2019. And then guess what happens in December? Rise of Skywalker, the end of the sequel trilogy. And then boom, all of a sudden this thing that they've come up with is outdated. And, that's something that the original trilogy is 40 plus years old. You could say that was outdated too, but they're also kind of timeless. And you could say, hey, sequel trilogy is timeless because things, but it hasn't had, and if all the things that you said would happen, maybe we would still be kind of in a sequel era. I think something probably wouldn't be appropriate. Probably would have been a prequel themed one, because the prequels have been getting a lot of love recently. And that, obviously would have been a big thing, but, it's just gonna be interesting to see how they treat this going forward, because now they've stuck to this. Obviously, they can't rebrand it as something else. It's Batu. What's Batu gonna be? What's it gonna be in 10 years? Seriously, I'm curious.
Yeah. So, but again, like I said earlier, I think what they're pivoting to is having the kind of flagship Star Wars era be the era with the shows related to The Mandalorian. And now that it's been announced that they're leading into a big movie event that may or may not be called Heir to the Empire, Now that has been announced, it's very clear that I think everything that they're going to be making from now on, if they add anything into Disney, if they make another resort or experience, or if they continue adding things on to Galaxy's Edge and new things there, I think it's all going to be there. I think that's where the Star Wars is right now. Star Wars is in that, what is that, like 6-7 years after Return of the Jedi era right now, something like that.
Well, and you think about it right now, like where storytelling is, I may be missing a few things, but like we have the shows. Once Andor wraps up, that's going to be the last show that's going to be in the original trilogy era.
Yeah.
The comics are into going towards Return of the Jedi, I think. So they'll be wrapping up soon and moving on to something else. Like the original trilogy may not be explored for much longer. We may be dealing with, I think, what the future of everything may be, pre-Phantom Menace and post-sequel trilogy.
Yeah.
Or post-original trilogy, really.
Yep. Yep. Yeah. There's four lines, right? Because it's like you have the ancient line in the James Mangold project. And that's thousands and thousands of years prior, and probably is not going to have much to do with anything else. Then you have the High Republic line. Joel mentioning the comment, don't forget the High Republic. Definitely not. Because that's important, because the Acolyte is going to tie into that. So it's jumping onto the screen, as well as all the great books and comics that are coming out for that. So that's the second line. And then your third line is where you are with the MandoVerse currently. And then your fourth line is that, next generation of Jedi being trained by Rey, a decade after the Rise of Skywalker. So there's those are the four eras. Nowhere in there is anything between the Phantom Menace and Return of the Jedi after so many things were for the last several years. And really going back to the beginning of the Disney purchase, because, Rogue One itself was in there. Star Wars Rebels, the first Disney thing to come out in 2014, was in that, right in the middle of that Empire, Rise of the Empire era. They've split out from it. They've split out.
I agree, because I feel like, that like Order 66 time to original, like they did really focus on that. Bad Batch, and then the Siege of Mandalore, like tying into things again, like everything just filled that space, which I think was really good, because that 20 years, like that, before all that was always a big question. It's like, damn, what was happening for those 20 years? We see, Obi-Wan drop Luke off, and then suddenly Luke is 20 years old and off on an adventure. What happens there? So I do think they've done that period really well, really well, and it's just about maybe applying that same kind of treatment to the post Return of the Jedi.
Yeah.
And I don't think it's going to take just the Mandalorian. Like, obviously, it's going to need like paper canon, which there's a lot of paper canon that's there for that period after Return of the Jedi. And then it's going to take the Mandalorian, it's going to take the MandoVerse, it's going to take I really think an animated show in this period would be beneficial.
Yeah,
I think I don't know who would be based on, or what side, or where it would be based on, but I do think like 5 to 10 years after Return of the Jedi, there needs to be some sort of animated show about something.
They have to have a show about Han, Luke, and Leia. That's what they need to do. That is what is missing right now. Is because because right now Han, Luke, and Leia are being relegated almost exclusively to the paper canon. Like, you just have Luke's cameo appearances and the Mandalorian, which are very much not about his character, but fleshing out the character of Grogu and Din Djarin. But when it comes to their own interpersonal relationships, there's nothing on camera for that. There's nothing on screen for that. And because of the, with Carrie Fisher no longer being with us, and with us wanting to tell stories when Luke and Han were younger than their respective actors are now, it makes the most sense to do that animated and have the animated show be about those characters, because you can actually tell those stories. You can go from, very much how you talked about, how well, what the heck happened? Luke was a baby, and then all of a sudden he's 20 years old. What happened? Like, that's how I feel now about, you have, Han and Leia, again together at the end of the Return of the Jedi, and then fast forward, they're split up and they have a 20-year-old kid who's fallen to the dark side. What the heck? Like, that's almost even more extreme. Like, at least Revenge of the Sith was written after A New Hope in such a way that you can watch Revenge of the Sith and then watch A New Hope, and it kind of makes sense how things ended up the way that they ended up. Whereas if you watch Return of the Jedi and then watch The Force Awakens, you'd be like, what happened? How did this happen? And they try to explain it, but explaining it after the fact gets dicey. Didn't really land very well with a lot of people. How handled they explained how they handled how Luke handled that was handled in such a way that it didn't quite work fully. It didn't land how they wanted it to land. It might have been better to tell that story over a long period of time. I think you would have, if you had way more nuance added to the Luke and Han relationship, the Luke and Leia relationship, the Luke and Ben relationship. I think that would add a lot more context and make the sequels make a bit more sense. I give them the benefit of the doubt. They make sense to me, but I can connect the dots in my head. I can kind of see those stories in my head. They exist. They just haven't been told, but like, I see them in my head canon. It needs to be on screen.
I think there should be a show that's kind of like NCIS. And granted, I haven't watched much NCIS, but that style, plus a little bit of Andor style, that is based on the New Republic, Carson Teva,
procedural.
The Eli, is that her name? Elia Kane character.
Yes.
I feel like kind of this, but it's not major story points. It's kind of just fleshing out some, like kind of like what. Well, Rebels was a bit more mainstream, but Rebels, a lot of it was adventure and just showing what was happening. It was showing how people were being treated under the Empire, how different worlds were functioning under the Empire. It was a lot of that was Rebels, and I think there needs to be a show in the New Republic showing more of the flaws, of the New Republic, because we got a very small little kind of hint of that in those Mando episodes, but.
Yeah,
I really think a show about it. And, I think Mon Mothma could be a key character in that kind of show, in what was happening then.
And you think about it, like, so much of the MandoVerse now, especially coming into Ahsoka, is a culmination of stuff that happened in animation. What I would like to see them do is to do animation and live action side by side and have characters jump back and forth between that. And I don't know. Would you have a situation where you have an animated series and Ahsoka's showing up and she's voiced by Ashley Eckstein, and then you have the Ahsoka season 2 or 3 and it's Rosario Dawson? I don't know. But obviously in animation you could get away with a lot more, as Chris mentioned. Han, Luke, and Leia, Lando, all those guys, all these characters that are hard to put into live action. And make them believable, you can easily do them in an animated show.
I love The Bad Batch. Again, the writing's amazing.
Right? So random.
But that should have been Han, Luke, and Leia. That should have been their show. That's what that team should have been doing
at that time.
I think. Yeah.
What?
Yeah.
What? Them as like 15, 16-year-olds.
No. Sorry. Let me say this
again. No. Luke would have been like 2 months old.
Hold on. I'm talking out of universe.
I'm old.
Wait.
2 months old. Luke Skywalker.
Oh my god! Let's end the show. Oh my god!
Out of universe. When the Clone Wars wrapped up after Siege of Mandalore, and you had that team ready to, go on kind of sans Dave Filoni and do another project. Should have been Han, Luke, and Leia 5 to 20 years after the original trilogy.
It should have been, and that should have been after the Book of Boba Fett, where Han was in Book of Boba Fett. Kira was in Book of Boba Fett, and like you see those characters again in live action with CGI for Han.
I see what you mean.
CGI?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. And then you get an animated show of the characters of Han, Luke, and Leia.
Yeah.
And then we get Mando season 3.
Yeah.
But 2 and 3, where you get the Luke scenes.
Yeah.
What's that? Like maybe in the Book of Boba Fett, you only see Han and Leia, but in Mando you see Luke.
Yeah.
And then the animated series is kind of how they got to what they're all doing.
Yeah.
In the 1 to 5 to 10 years after Return. Oh man, we should run Star Wars.
No, I think that's what they're doing right now. Bad Batch is done. Like, and they needed to kind of go off of what was going on with Clone Wars and do the spin-off show. And okay, they brought the Bad Batch back. They made, they put them in proper animation and wanted to spin that off. That's fine. That's great. We had 3 seasons, but that's done now. Where do they go next? I mean, I think either the High Republic or the MandoVerse. Like those are your 2 choices for the next animated series.
Yeah. Mando.
Yes,
just had to get that out of my system.
So thank you, Chris, for that question that we so thoroughly answered.
Yes,
I hope you like that answer, Chris.
Oh,
we got another time for a few more Lucky
we
Lego.
got time for a few more. Okay.
I hope.
Okay,
so
I wanted to bring this one up because Lucky Lego on Discord said, I think y'all should do a few podcasts just to recap all the seasons of Rebels. I'm just now watching and rewatching it and to hear your all's thoughts on the theories. So I will mention, we already did that. Okay, it's called Live from Lothal. It's a podcast. It's on your feeds. You can literally I think you can just type it into your podcast.
I'm gonna go listen to it.
Yeah,
I haven't.
So
I haven't even listened to
look,
it.
I think it would be a great companion to, if you're rewatching Rebels or watching Rebels for the first time, to go back and just like get our fresh thoughts, or 2014, 2015 fresh thoughts on Rebels, as the episodes were coming out back. Actually, did we start Live from Lothal from the beginning?
I think we did.
I guess we did. Okay, yeah,
see
it's
why
a whole.
not.
So there should be like 4 seasons of that out there.
Yeah, there is. So check that out. Just want to get all these in before the end of the show. Jeff White asked, because very few people can afford the $5,000 cost plus travel and tickets of Galactic Starcruiser, what do you think is the most reasonable price for this attraction? Again, it's a matter of tiering. For the experience,
$5.
For the experience, it's worth the price. The problem is the experience is overkill. Like, to the point where there should be versions of it that are a little bit more economy. That's what I think. Like, I'm fine if someone wants to pay $5,000 for the full thing, then maybe that's worth it. But not everybody can, so there should probably be some options that are lower, or they should have just made the whole thing less involved, is kind of my take on it.
I would have said maybe just over $2,000. That's what I probably would have pitched it. And if you get like a 4-person room and you can go with a group of friends, if you split that, 500 each, like that seems like, like that's a lot of money, but it's like, it's a 2-day thing.
Yeah. I mean, that's the other thing that's tough about it is like, you don't save a lot the way they had the tickets designed. You didn't save a lot by splitting rooms because mainly you're paying for the experience. So it was a little bit cheaper to split a room, but mainly most of that cost was in just getting your body on there and didn't have anything to do with the room. So that was a bit of a thing that made it difficult too, which is actually similar to how cruises work too. So that's not, again, it functions more like a cruise than a hotel.
Also, maybe let you like buy your own food. Maybe you don't want your meals included. Maybe just like, hey, you want to go have McDonald's one night because you want to save your money, and you'll have McDonald's in the Galactic Starcruiser, and that's fine.
Galactic Donald Cruiser.
And then the last one we'll get to from Lucky Lego. Do you think that Thrawn will have a clone like he did in Heir to the Empire, or even an impersonator like what happened before in that series? Dang, those were some amazing books. My opinion on that is because they already went the clone route with Gideon. They're done with that. It would seem kind of odd to then turn around and be like, but Thrawn successfully got clones after Gideon failed. Like, there's no backstory to how Thrawn would have figured out how to do that. Whereas they had 2 3 seasons of backstory for how Gideon got to the point where he cloned himself, and they, had all these little hints towards it, and the stuff with Pershing and Grogu, and I just feel like it would be kind of odd storytelling to go through all of that to then defeat the clones, to then have another clone come back that's completely unexplained where it came from.
Yeah, I think maybe there will be, similar to Heir to the Empire, there will be a threat of clones. There will be a threat of, this is what Thrawn could do, this is what Thrawn is going to. I think maybe Mount Tantus will come back into the equation.
Snoke has to come from somewhere.
Yeah. So, there's a lot of different scenarios. I think Filoni's going to be like, okay, I'm going to do these things, but also needs to be different. It can't just be, Thrawn's after clones and he's going to Mount Tantus and he's doing this and he has a clone Jedi sidekick. Like, that's too close. It needs to be something different.
Yeah. Mm. Yep. That makes a lot of sense. All right.
Is that it? That's it.
That's it. There we go. I was like, how do you make music?
Hannah, well, yeah, that's where I step in.
We need a live performance of our outro because I can't figure out how to make the computer do it. There we go. Thank you, everybody, for watching this episode of the Star Wars Underworld podcast and listening on your favorite podcast apps. Definitely subscribe and review and become a member. We really appreciate that. If you would, thank you, everybody that has already, and thanks to everybody who left super chats and left comments for us to read in our Discord. We really love interacting with you, and we'd love many more comments to get to in future weeks. Of course, the way you can participate in the live show is we'll be back in 2 weeks, probably.
Yeah, I was going to ask about that.
Yeah.
Are we doing a show next week?
We're going to see if we can put together some special content, but we don't have any guarantees, so we'll update you. So there either will be something kind of different next week that's not a regular show, something else, or there just will be nothing and there'll be another thing in 2 weeks. One of those two options are what you can realistically
Paying
expect.
attention to the socials, it feels like Lucasfilm is shifting into Indiana Jones mode. I feel like we're not going to be getting anything Star Wars for a while. So
that's true.
We may just become an Indiana Jones podcast maybe next week. Maybe that's what we'll do. That'll be the special thing.
The Indiana Jones underworld.
Yes. But when we do broadcast, it is Thursdays at 6 p.m. We're a half hour earlier now. 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern. I have no idea what that is in Australian because it changes 4 times a year.
11 a.m.
There we go. That's what I was going to
time.
guess. I was going to say it's somewhere around 11, but I don't know if it's 12. I don't know if it's 10. I don't know if it's 1. Because sometimes it's those 10. But it is 11 currently if you are on the east coast of the Australian continent and country. It's the same thing. Yes.
Wait, what?
No.
It's a continent and it's a country?
We are our own country.
That is right.
Mind you.
Yes, and of course you can find that on the Star Wars Underworld YouTube channel. And our Discord, you can find the links in the description of the YouTube videos and in the notes of the podcast episodes. Ben, thank you so much for hosting tonight.
Was that my cue?
Yes,
Yes,
that was
that's your cue.
My internet went out. I touched my internet cord and it went out right at the moment you were.
That came back quick.
Yeah, it did. But yeah, it was a pleasure as always talking about all the stuff that may be true, may not be true. Love talking about rumors and also the real fun stuff, and also hearing from you guys. So and you heard it here. We talked about it last week, but it's official now. Ask SWU. Use the Discord. If you're not on the Discord, go join the Discord and just submit your questions. Maybe we can get a few more, and we'll spend even more time. We got, if we don't do like a regular show next week, we'll definitely have like a kind of a back stuff. We might even do an extended thing because, like I said, I don't think there's going to be a lot of Star Wars news over the next few weeks. I really don't. I think they're going to be pulling back on it. So this might be a good chance to like just create a dialogue, just like get some questions from you guys. Maybe we'll just do an entire show of that. Maybe because they'll just otherwise we'll just be talking about I don't know. Whatever, an Indiana Jones TV spot. So that might get weird. But it's been a pleasure. And I will definitely not be here next week. So see you guys in 2 weeks.
Awesome. And at Ben Hart with no E is where you can follow what Ben is up to when he is not on the Star Wars Underworld podcast.
Yes.
Also, don't expect much. Seriously, I don't tweet hardly at all. Come on.
At Ben Hart with no E. Hannah, thank you for hosting as well.
It has been a pleasure. It has been such fun. I've learnt so much. We're not basing Skeleton Crew off the medieval Queen Anne Boleyn. I've learnt that much, so it's been a great show. It's been good fun. Ben, are you missing something? Are you forgetting to mention something?
Wait, what?
Because if you're forgetting it, I'll mention it. We did an incredibly important data research last week that we put out to the people.
That's
on
right.
Oh
Twitter.
my god!
Right.
Oh my god! We
And
have
we
to follow
have
that
the
up,
results.
don't we?
I have the results right
get
here.
results? Oh, thank you, thank you.
Would you like me to share?
Yes,
So-
we need to know.
Yes.
So our poll was: you must choose between Oreos, Jar Jar, Cheesecake Factory, or Star Wars Visions Volume 2. Over 763 people voted. Well, not over, that amount of people voted. 763 people voted.
Half a person more than that.
The results are in. They're tight. They are tight.
Oh,
Will
boy.
I say that? Coming in fourth spot, at last spot, with 16.3% is Cheesecake Factory. Okay,
Understandable.
okay, fair enough. All right. Coming in at the third place with 25.4% is Jar Jar.
What?
Which is a shock. He was having a strong lead at this time.
Come on, Misa
Third.
disappointed.
Jar Jar is third.
Now, first and second is different by 0.4%. There's only 0.4% difference between first and second. So, with 29% and coming in as second is Oreos. So, meaning 29.4% is Star Wars Visions Volume 2.
Yes.
One day ahead.
Wow.
Okay. Yes, I'll take it. I'll take
Wow.
it. I said that would be
I
second.
was
so I
shocked
take
by
it.
that. I'm very, very
I
shocked
take
by
it.
that.
I
Vision
think
just
the
came
hungry
out of
people's-
nowhere.
The hungry people split the vote. They're like, do I want an Oreo or do I want Cheesecake Factory? I got to choose one.
Yeah.
You know, combine them together. That's a lot of votes for food.
That's true.
As opposed to
That's
Star
true.
Wars. We found out that people might like food just as much, if not more than Star Wars, which makes sense because we need to, survive. But
Let's make an Oreo flavored cheesecake in the shape of Jar Jar. That'll sell. That'll get the people.
that might get you to enjoy Star Wars Visions if you eat that while watching. That's what you were missing. You just didn't have your Oreo cheesecake Jar Jar cake, and it just spoiled the experience. And
Oh, I love it. I
Yeah.
love it.
season 3, let's go.
Anyway, was this my bit? Thank you, Heaven, for me being
Yes.
here. I had a great time.
Thank you, and of course at the Raeside, RAE side, is where you can find how to spell Hannah's name and watch all of her content. So check it out on social media at the Raeside and on YouTube at the Raeside. We've mentioned pretty much everything in this very long outro, so there's really nothing else to promote. We just
Close it out.
basically covered everything that we usually cover. So that's it. Thank you for watching. We'll be back again next week-ish or the week after that, next fortnight. We'll be back next fortnight. There we go.
We will do another show at some point.
We will be back at some point. I will be back. And until then, for Ben and Hannah, my name is Chris, and may the Force be with you. I have to do this part too. It's a wrap.